The 7 deadly sins are not creations of over-imaginative monks. They are real, and yes, they must be avoided. We've all heard of them. Hollywood has riffed on them in film. Writers have personified them on page and stage. They are known as the 7 deadly sins. And here they are: pride, anger, lust, envy, gluttony, avarice, or greed, and sloth. But what are they? Well, although we popularly call them the 7 deadly sins, this is a bit of a misnomer. Theology more accurately knows them as the 7 capital vices. And this difference is not merely semantic. It's actually very important. Let me explain. Simply put, a sin is an action, an evil action. A vice, however, is not an action, but a disposition towards an evil action. A vice is the evil twin of a virtue, and both virtue and vice are not actions, but habits. Now, just as a virtue is a good habit, seated in the soul, disposing one to act rightly, that is, in accord with reason and law, so is a vice a bad habit, also seated in the soul, disposing one to unreasonable and lawless action. And just as we may, over time and through repeated good action, acquire good habits or virtues, so also we may, over time and through repeated bad action, acquire bad habits or vices. And just as a virtue not only disposes us to good action, but even more renders that good action swift and pleasant, so also does vice render its disposed evil action easy to perform and even second nature. But these 7 vices, pride, anger, lust, envy, gluttony, avarice, and sloth, are not just any vices. Theology calls them capital vices. But what does that mean? The word capital is derived from the Latin word for head, capit, capitis. These vices are called capital since they stand at the head of a whole other series of vices. That is, they are the root or the beginning of an entire array of sinful actions that flow from them. St. Thomas Aquinas states that a capital vice denotes one from which, as having a most desirable end, other vices originate. Wherefore, through desiring that end, men are incited to sin in many ways. Or in another place, he says that a capital vice is one that has a very desirable end, so that through desire for that end, a man proceeds to commit many sins, all of which are said to arise from that vice as from a principal vice. So how does that work? St. Thomas realizes that as human persons, created in God's own image and likeness, we are called to be moved by love towards our end and perfection. In other words, love is the very engine that moves us to holiness by causing us to either desire that which is good for us or be repulsed by that which is bad for us. Vice, then, is like a perverted love, a love that is disordered in some way. And the capital vices are those which distort a fundamental love. They twist and warp our attraction to what is good or our repulsion from what is evil. Pride, or vainglory, is an inordinate desire for excellence, honor, and praise. Anger is an inordinate desire for vengeance. Lust is the inordinate desire for sexual pleasure. Envy denotes a sadness about another's good as being a hindrance to our own good. Gluttony is the inordinate desire for the pleasures of food and drink. Avarice or greed is the inordinate desire for external worldly goods. And sloth denotes a sadness about spiritual good on account of the bodily labor involved. And since these vices are capital vices, each one brings a host of daughter vices that flow from them. So, in the next videos in this series, we will explore each of these vices in turn, what they are, what their daughters are, how we acquire them, and most importantly, how we avoid them. Brothers and sisters, keep studying. This is Father Brad Elliott for the Western Dominican Province.